Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. You've just heard the title of our session, which is rather broad, and we just thought that is the title sort of suggests the rapidly shifting dynamics in this region, but to actually, as one of the key issues at the heart of the new dynamics in this region, I think the Japan and ASEAN relationship is key, and that is what this session will focus on. So I hope you're braced for a lot of Japan-ASEAN dynamics, and I can assure you we have an excellent panel today to address all the many thorny issues raised by what we're seeing now in the rapidly evolving situation in Southeast Asia. So just allow me to briefly introduce our distinguished speakers. I'd like to start right next to me is Siddhartho Suryodipuro, Director General for ASEAN Cooperation at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia. Next to him is Ambassador Ong Keng Yong, Executive Deputy Chairman of S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies, or RSIS, and Secretary General of ASEAN from 2003 to 7. Next to him is Hiroshi Ishikawa, who is Special Advisor to the President on Digital Innovation of ERIA, the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. Last but very not least is Naoki Mashita, Chairman and Group CEO of VCube, Inc., which is an innovative visual communication services and software provider. So we don't have a lot of time, but we've got enough time for some intelligent discussion and a few questions at the end. So save up your challenging, curly questions for then. And I'd like to first turn to the dynamics of the Japan-ASEAN relationship. As suggested last year, to commemorate the 50th year of ASEAN-Japan friendship and cooperation, ASEAN and Japan together launched the ASEAN-Japan Economic Co-Creation Vision, which is quite a mouthful, but it charts the ASEAN and Japan economic cooperation push into present and future direction. So I'd like to kick off with a look at that economic co-creation vision to ask Bapak Arto this. A number of initiatives were proposed under this co-creation concept, including an economic forum. The first dealt with new generation autos, AI, and green transformation. But apart from such things like talking shops and great intentions, what does co-creation really mean in this context? And how does it translate into actual economic initiatives between ASEAN and Japan?
Thanks for that, Gwen, and good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be part of this panel. I'd like to thank the FPCI for including me here. Let me begin by giving a historical foundation to it, which I think all Indonesians would appreciate. Because first of all, Japan is ASEAN's long-standing partner. We celebrated 50 years of relationship, a relationship that began in 1973. But, as my Indonesian friends and colleagues here would appreciate, that even before that, the role of Japan in the founding of the Republic of Indonesia, there's the downside, obviously, but also the upside. So this is a relationship that goes back a long way, but also creating a solid foundation. And when this relationship began 50 years ago, it began also as a donor-recipient relationship. But today, consider this, that income per capita, for example, of Singapore is more than twice as large than the income per capita of Japan, almost 3 times, in fact. This is just one example, and this would illustrate how moving forward is going to be an increasingly equal partnership based on common interest, and therefore the title of co-creation. And you rightly identified issues like IT, AI, green economy. We have a common interest, for example, in working together on how to prepare our next generation for the future of work when AI and robotics is part of the economic process. How do we ensure that our youth would be prepared for the future of work? And then also addressing issues like climate change, rising sea level, health resilience, financial stability, and other issues of new sources of economic growth. How do we upgrade trade and investment in this relationship? So that is a broad the thinking behind co-creations. So let me stop there.
Can I just add very quickly, because you mentioned the donor-recipient relationship in the beginning, and I think that's probably an underlying theme in this whole panel. The changing dynamic of Japan-ASEAN is a shift from just donor-recipient to a more equal relationship. But, being more equal rather than just a recipient requires some contribution from the recipient side. So how does that play in with what you just said?
So when we talk about the future of work, that would mean that workers in the future cannot only do repetitive work or be too specialized in one area, because you cannot defeat AI or robotics. A person in the work of the future would have to have range. It would have to have creativity. Creativity is an area where I think it would be the last bastion of human employment, because this is where we create, we be creative. And this would require range that not only specialization matters, but general and multiple specialization or multiple capabilities would be important. So this is something that we should together look at, and I think in a partnership with Japan, ASEAN, there's a lot of creativity in ASEAN. I know a lot of creativity in Indonesia. So when you think about manufacturing and then design, batik design, for example, it requires a lot of creativity. Or when it comes to movies or, all of these cartoons and so on, a lot of culture is behind all of these, what comes out as a product, culture and creativity.
Excellent. You mean also youth, which Japan increasingly has less of, whereas Southeast Asia has a lot of. So you're saying the contribution from ASEAN to equalise the relationship could be in kind, including human resources?
Well, it is true, yeah. But also Japan has this deep source of culture and tradition that also has a lot of soft power outreach to Southeast Asia and vice versa.
Right. Thank you. And actually turning to Ishikawa-san, in your opinion, what does co-creation mean from the Japanese perspective?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. And first of all, thank you very much for having me in this great panel discussion. And I am going to speak on behalf of, I'm area, Economic Research Institute for South ASEAN and Southeast Asia, and I'm involved in the many cooperative projects between the ASEAN and Japan. So I completely agree to the Pa Haruto mentioned about the co-creation. We just created the kind of concept last year as the 50th anniversary of ASEAN and Japan. And this is based on the background you just mentioned. Compared to 50 years ago, the situation or relationship between ASEAN and Japan are completely different, and especially from the economic perspective. Like right now, the ASEAN market as a whole is already like 90% of Japan's GDP. So that single fact shows that the relationship between ASEAN and Japan changes completely. And for Japan, what the co-creation means is that our relative size or the competitive advantage in the economic sense is completely changed last 20, 30 years. And also we still have good Japanese companies, technologies, but we cannot, just to sell Japanese products to the entire market, especially the markets in the global south. So we need to work even closely with the Southeast Asian companies, Southeast Asian economies, and as the Pa mentioned about the creativity of diversity, that is something we need to incorporate into our corporates or a technology. And especially in the field of AI, just mentioned, AI means what is important about AI is that the size of the data or the talent or size of the talent. That is something that Japan itself cannot provide. I mean, Japan is like 1 million people, and if we combine with the ASEAN, we're going to have the 700 million. So that makes a huge difference. So that kind of a relationship is something we see in the concept of co-creation.
Thank you. So let's turn to ASEAN-Japan, both economic relations and prospects for leveraging those to further develop the relationship. I mean, trade between ASEAN and Japan reached $241 billion in 2023, while total foreign direct investment inflow from Japan to ASEAN was about $14.5 billion, according to some measures. So currently, Japan stands as ASEAN's fourth largest trading partner and one of its top external sources of FDI. Now, that provides an excellent base for further development, not just of trade, but you've got a solid bedrock to leverage into many other areas, which are already underway, but take it further. So I'd like to ask Ambassador Ong, how do you see the current relationship, not just the economics of it, but what's established, and how has that changed over the years, and where do we go from here? How do you leverage the very robust economic trade relationship?
Well, first of all, let me recall what Pa Arthur just mentioned. Yeah, Japan and ASEAN, we used to have a donor-donee relationship, but in the last 40 years, the ASEAN part of it has become more and more creative, and in fact, we are now moving on our growth trends. Just one significant data point. Our ASEAN population is around 685 million people, 685 million people as of 2023. But the number of digital savvy people in ASEAN is around 460 million, 460. So we have population of 685, but 460 million ASEAN citizens are already IT savvy, buying IT products, relying more and more on AI and other kind of digital inventions and technological advancement. So that relationship had changed from a simple buy and sell or sell and buy relationship to how we call the latest agreement between ASEAN and Japan co-creation. Yeah. Under that, we will see more Japanese investment in innovative companies in ASEAN, as well as movement of workers from Japan to Singapore, to Indonesia, to Malaysia, to Thailand. These are the more advanced IT sectors in ASEAN, but coming on strongly, Vietnam and all that. Then Japanese side have also opened up their market for the IT savvy ASEAN citizen to work in Japan, to maybe even invest in some Japanese startups, and Japanese can also invest in ASEAN startups. So this involves co-creating opportunities, co-creating new area of expansion for the economy. From the donor-donee, now we become co-creators.
Right.
That is the most significant change in our relationship. As you mentioned, the trade between Japan and ASEAN and investment from Japan to ASEAN will continue to grow and will be very significant. But then inside this growth, you see more opportunities for ASEAN citizens, ASEAN companies to enter Japanese market, and also for Japanese entrepreneurs and companies to enter into other part of ASEAN market, which previously they have not thought about. So the whole concept here is that for the next 20 to 25 years, there will be a great flow between the two sides, Japan and ASEAN countries. There are 10 of us, and Timor-Leste will join ASEAN very soon, so there are 11 of us. So it is a very dynamic market. And on top of that, the travel, the tourism part is something that we all must not minimize. Yeah. ASEAN citizens visiting Japan is between 3.5 million to 4 million a year. COVID took everything down, but now has come back. And Japanese side also about 3 million to 4 million Japanese citizens come to ASEAN. And because of these millions of people exchanging ideas and visiting each other, over time, it will create a very strong basis for the co-creative relationship. So that is the most significant thing that has happened in ASEAN-Japan relationship in the last 3 decades. Yeah. It reflects our ASEAN citizens' ability to move up technologically and to be opportunistic about all those growth and innovation we can see in digitalization as well as advancing technology.
Right.
How this will affect the political relationship between ASEAN and Japan and the security defense relationship between ASEAN, Japan, and the Southeast Asian, East Asian security situation, we will have to monitor because it is still early days. It's easy to say we are all friendly to, ASEAN is friendly to everybody, and Japan looks at Southeast Asia. And we have many surveys that show that Japan is the most trusted partner of ASEAN member states. But as you go along, there are other dynamics in play. Most likely, the other countries beyond ASEAN, Japan will look at how the economic relationship advances and how this impact on security and defense of our respective ASEAN member states, Japan, as well as the whole region. Yeah, and we have looked at this whole dynamic in the context of the overall global development, the competitive dynamic between China and USA, and US role in providing the so-called security over the horizon for our ASEAN region to grow economically and socially. So there is, in one word, change. And how we are able to write the change will determine how this relationship benefit both sides.
That's very interesting. I think you're essentially reinforcing Pak Arto's earlier point about, the digital talent and savvy and driving the equalizing dynamic between, as well as, right, as well as security. Thank you. So I think you've set the stage very well for a question over there to Mashita-san talking about all this from the business community's perspective. You know, what successes and challenges have been encountered on the way, and taking in these very good points. And how have the efforts, including co-creation vision, as well as regional agreements we've seen, particularly in trade, such as AJCEP, RCEP, CPTPP, benefit the private sector and support the business community?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I hope my mouth still work.
Yeah.
Because it's
I hope it does
freezing
too.
cold,
Yes,
actually.
it's
So I moved to
extremely
Singapore 13 years ago. So I noticed that the inside is always cold, but here is the coldest stage, actually. So yes. So thank you very much for having me on this stage. And my name is Mashita, and I'm tech entrepreneur. Started my business 26 years ago, so it seems to be no longer kind of a startup. But well, I started that company when I was in college, and also I was serving as a vice chair of Keizai Doyukai, which is one of the largest the business community in Japan until this March. So I'm going to talk from those perspectives. So Japanese business community has been believing the potential of the ASEAN countries in the last 50 years and kept working with ASEAN through the investment and trading. And total amount of the GDP of ASEAN has been almost 90% of the GDP of Japan, which is $3.9 trillion. That's a great growth. A number of the companies working in ASEAN as a Japanese company, it has been more than 10,000 companies already, and particularly in Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam for manufacturing and services. And now it's extending to financial industries and retails and others. And the challenges, what we have, is getting bigger and bigger. So I'm going to talk about 2 points. The first one is about the size, the volume of the business. So, well, somebody said that Japan has been the fourth largest position of the trading with ASEAN. It used to be the number one. So, and then fourth largest, but still already less than one third of the number one, which is China. So it's almost impossible to compete with those size of the countries like United States, China, because Japan is a shrinking population. So we need to forget about the size. So we need to think about the quality. How can we improve the quality of the relationship with ASEAN? So that's one thing. And another thing is the speed. So maybe a lot of people are thinking that the Japanese are very slow. Actually, it used to be not slow. Maybe after the World War II. So the Japan moved very quickly. But now, everything is very slow. So I'm sitting as a board of large bank in Japan too. It's a very nice, good company, but everything is very slow. And also I'm serving as the member of the regulatory reform committee of the Japanese government, which is changing a lot of regulations, including rideshare or telemedicine or those kind of things. It's taking long time. Good news is those kind of things is now changing. Even rideshare, it was almost impossible to implement into the Japanese society because of the huge, against by the taxi association. But from this April, partially, rideshare was finally implemented. So the Uber, Grab, those kind of things will be available. But still, it's in the halfway. So we need to move quicker, and then the speed is always the issue, even for those kind of things. And also the Keizai Doyukai. So as I mentioned, that's a large business community in Japan, and it has 16,000 members in Tokyo. 1,600 members in Tokyo, and nationwide 17,000 members, and most of them are the corporate executives of large enterprises. And the Keizai Doyukai is now organizing has been organizing the AJBM in the last 50 years. This year has been 50th anniversary of the AJBM. So we are bringing those corporate executives from Japan, the top executives, to ASEAN to meet with local leaders in ASEAN countries to let them understand the actual speed of ASEAN from bottom of their heart. So those kind of, how can we improve the speed of the Japanese society and economy or business leaders are kind of a very big key for the challenge. And another thing is, so the relationship between Japan and ASEAN has been quite long. And then we built the great friendship from maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago, which means those people who made the friendship is getting older and older. And then some of them has already passed away. So we are losing the people who has a great relationship between those two regions. So now we need to, how do you call it, extend those kind of friendship to the younger generation, like us or even younger generation. The Japanese government, METI, and well, the JETRO, and also Keizai Doyukai are organizing the event called ASEAN Japan, well, Young Leader Business Summit. So we are no longer young, but it's called the Young Business Leader Summit.
Well, it's all relative.
Very young people are sitting.
It's all relative.
Yeah, but that is, so this year is going to be a second, well, the conference in Kyoto. But we are gathering the top executive of young leaders in ASEAN and also entrepreneurs in Japan to make the good community with a friendship. So building those kind of friendship in the younger generation is also another very important. Well, it's challenging, but it's very important for the both regions.
Yeah, I must say, I think this is an emerging theme already in this dialogue, is youth as well, which I've never seen such focus in the last 3 decades in ASEAN policy making and pundit circles on the young, which is fantastic to see the recognition of the capital and the value that comes from leveraging.
It's also a function of the economy, Gwen. If you look at the Indonesian economy and the number of unicorn company in Indonesia, no investor around the world can afford to ignore this big market in Indonesia. And then now you add on Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand. So all the young people here, try your best to set up your own unicorns. Yeah. Unicorn company, what is it? I was looking at
$1 billion, I believe.
Yeah, you have to have
$1 billion company.
value over $1 billion US dollar. But in ASEAN, we have 59 unicorn company. Majority of them in Indonesia. So Indonesian colleagues, friends, go out there and make your millions or billions.
Can I also throw in one other thing, which is this is partly a result also of the rapidly aging demographic in the older countries like Japan, etc. So it instantly adds to the attractiveness of these young, vibrant and huge economies like yours, Rakato.
But you know, Japan also has a very large external economy in Southeast Asia. So apart from trade investment, the Japanese companies establishing its own supply chain that interact among themselves and then export to the ASEAN market or to a third country is also very significant.
That's why the maritime sector in ASEAN is very critical. Yeah, the Japanese economy is supported by such a strong, supply chain. Yeah, many other countries in Europe suffer very much due to the disruption of the supply chain during COVID.
Right.
But Japanese company more or less got the thing under control quite quickly. So it is something that we can learn from Japan. And I think big economy like Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines will have to find a way to secure our supply chain more solidly by looking at the Japanese model.
Right. Well, I think a lot of that prowess is also on logistics and transport. So, yes.
I would just want to add a comment about the digitalization in the startup. Especially the importance of the cooperation between ASEAN and Japan in the field of startup and digitalization. Because right now, as you know, we mentioned that the ASEAN has a huge young and digital savvy population, but it doesn't continue forever. So right now, ASEAN has a very rich young and digital savvy talent, but it's going to continue for next 10, 20 years. So that is the window of opportunity for moving to the next step and for the innovation. So that is why now we need to focus more on the digitalization in startup. And that area is something Japan plays more role for helping, because
Right.
we have technology like background and also the experiences of the last 10, 20 years for the younger. I mean, like we are already Asian, but we have like an asset of sharing with the Southeast Asian countries.
Right. So in your role advising area and, you're looking at some of the economic dynamics, can I just ask you, how would you assess Japan's commitment to supporting this region through its economic institutions or joint institutions, such as Japan Economic Foundation, Japan ASEAN Integration Fund? In addition, I'm based in Bangkok, so it was news this year when Japan revitalized and boosted its Mekong region fund to support those Mekong region countries as well. So in the future, are we going to see a more intensified economic commitment from Japan towards ASEAN through those kind of channels, which is big money channeled through big institutions?
Right. Yeah. So Japan continues to commit to support the ASEAN region through various institutions, which you just mentioned, like CIFP or like JICA, various institutions. But what is common among those institutions is that we are support is going towards the human capital or like an infrastructure, which contributes to the sustainable growth of the ASEAN region. Like we don't want to leave the unused infrastructure or like just a debt after we finish the support. So that is the common idea of which the Japan has for the support to that ASEAN region. And I want to highlight one institution which I belong to, which is the AREA. AREA is of course the international independent institution, but the last year, the Japanese government did the financial support to the area to establish the Digital Innovation and Sustainable Economy Center, which is going to focus more on the digitalization and the startup. So because that is going to be the driver for the ASEAN's growth, and also now is the time for the focusing on the digitalization for that.
So you're saying that's additional and further evidence that Japan's still very committed to using the channel of these big institutions into ASEAN.
Right.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of issues to get through and very little amount of time. So I'm going to scrunch it down. But one thing I would like to throw in is to address the kind of more security political aspect of the relationship. And just to remind people, we've got both ASEAN and we heard in several panels today how many new leaders and new administrations are in the region. Japan as well has had a surprise change of, if not ruling party administration. Now, as you know, there is a lot of intensifying geopolitical rivalry in the region, and the coming change of administration in the US, which is preoccupying probably everyone around the world, and particularly this region. So I'd like to ask both Pakato and Ambassador Ong, in light of the growing geopolitical rivalry in the region, how should ASEAN and Japan respond to these challenges? What strategic opportunities can be further harnessed to strengthen the ASEAN-Japan partnership, enhance its impact, and grapple with these, very rapidly shifting dynamics? Maybe don't find
Okay, I think the most important thing between Japan and ASEAN at that level that the chairman of our session is talking about is one word only, which is multilateralism. So ASEAN countries, we are committed to multilateralism. We want to make sure the multilateral institution continue to work. ASEAN itself is multilateral. I come from Singapore, but when we talk about ASEAN, we need to think about all the views and interests of the ASEAN member states. There are 9 of us outside of Singapore. So Japan and ASEAN will continue to work on multilateral institution, multilateral initiatives, and we try our best to keep it efficient and useful for our own country's well-being. But more importantly, as a region, Japan and ASEAN, we are committed to keep our Asia-Pacific region, or now what we call Indo-Pacific region, safe, secure, and open for business and growth. But that will require a lot of diplomacy on our part, both in the case of Japan as well as ASEAN member states. But I think given our track record, Japan and ASEAN countries, we should be able to ride the storm, so to speak. Yeah, and hopefully our leadership in ASEAN countries, as you mentioned earlier, there has now been changes of leaders and government and all that, but we have become more and more democratized in Southeast Asia. Take Indonesia as an example. So hopefully by working with a democratic tradition like Japanese, we can do more to deal with all these challenges. Question now is how do we coexist with China and coexist with America? Yeah. One guy say America cannot be here because geographically they are far away. But America say we are a maritime nation depending on international trade. So this is the growth area that they must be in. So how are they going to reconcile these two opposing positions?
Right.
All the young people here, you all can think through and work in government and your company to try to make sure peace continues so that Pak Ato and myself will all grow peacefully old.
Uh-huh. Well, I think that is an opening for you, Pak Ato, to, to address those issues. Keep it short, and we'll have one more question, which will mean we'll run a little bit over time, but bad luck. Anyway, go on.
Ambassador Ong Keng Yong began with one word, multilateralism. I'll begin with 2 concepts, maritime stability and ASEAN centrality. Let me explain. This region, Southeast Asia, is the key region, maritime region for the world's traffic. And it is a challenge on how all countries whose prosperity, whose security depends on access to this region and access through this region. So Southeast Asian maritime region is not only a thoroughfare, it's also an arena. So it's a matter for ASEAN, first and foremost, but also with partners like Japan, to ensure that this maritime region will remain open, will remain inclusive, and above all, will remain productive. So Japan and all ASEAN partners are a stakeholder. If the ASEAN region of 700 million people continue to grow in a very healthy way as it is now, then all countries benefit from it. No country has an interest in any kind of disruption. So that's the first one. A lot of work has been done into this field. The second is on ASEAN centrality. I know this is a concept that has been doubted many times, and it should be. But let me give you my perspective. When we talk about ASEAN centrality, we are actually talking about 4 interlocking concepts or dimensions. One is geographic centrality. I touched on it earlier. It is geographically central. Secondly is institutional centrality. ASEAN, various ASEAN mechanisms, there are ASEAN summits, ASEAN East Asia summits, in which all the great powers come together. The other is diplomatic centrality. A lot of diplomacy takes place at the sidelines of ASEAN meetings. A lot of diplomacy, even those not involving ASEAN countries. And then the fourth is economic centrality. We talked about ASEAN-Japan economic relations. Japan is ASEAN's #4 trading partner, But did you know that for Japan, ASEAN is, I think it's number 2 or number 3 largest trading partner. ASEAN is the number 1 largest trading partner for China, also for Australia. I think for India is number 2. For the US is number 4. And for the European Union, ASEAN is the 6th largest trading partner. So economic centrality. And this is where Japan and ASEAN have a lot of room to work in.
Thank you. And finally, if you're not frozen to death yet, Master
Or you
Sun,
frozen.
let's just end this. Yes. Let's you better be quick here. The value of ASEAN's digital economy is projected to double to $2 trillion by 2030. What steps can ASEAN and Japan take to close the digital gap and fully capitalize on the digital economy's projected growth? And I think you were going to say make a point about the MSMEs. So keep it short.
Okay, yeah, I will try. And then the digital gap is a huge issue, and then maybe that's the biggest thing is what Japan wants to learn from the ASEAN, actually. So as the ambassador said, so the digitalized people in Japan is still very small. And the biggest agenda, what we have in the corporates in Japan is a reskilling of the laborers. So Keizai Dokai and also Google and some other, the group of ministries in Japan are now doing the reskilling consortium for educating the employees about the digital things remotely. So that is coming up, and then we need to fix that. So we started from the no digital barrier or gap, which means if there is a people who cannot use smartphone, don't use smartphone, everyone don't use smartphone. So it doesn't work. So now the people is using the smartphone and other technologies, and then there is a digital gap. So we need to fill the gap. So, and then we need to extend those kind of things to the ASEAN countries as well. And then if we look at the SMB.
SMS.
Yeah, so we need to
MSME, sorry.
The
Medium and
startups
small, yes.
should be the key. Miss me. Okay. And the startups should be the key. So the Japanese government is now trying to make the number of the startups 10 times and the investment to the startups 10 times by
You mean across the
20
region, or you mean in Japan? Yeah, in Japan.
2027.
Yeah.
And then it's actually now happening. So the top, the black and the top talents from the top university in Japan used to be going to the government or large enterprises, but now they are going to startup. It's a huge change. It's happening. Number of the startup is coming up, and then we do have a good stock exchange. So you guys should remember that. So in Asia, there is a Tokyo Stock Exchange where all companies in ASEAN can go public as well. And the Tokyo Stock Exchange is now trying to make those ASEAN companies go public in Tokyo Stock Exchange.
You mean adding incentives, like trying to attract them?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, yes. And then you can have a big multiples there, more than other stock exchange in ASEAN regions. So, and it would be a great gateway to the European countries and also United States. So those kind of cooperation between ASEAN and Japan, including those startup things, is a great opportunity what we have.
Right.
I think must say something about green economy, you know.
Oh, it better be 10 seconds.
Yes. All the young people must get used
You've
to
got
the
to
green
give them a
economy.
chance to ask questions.
Yeah. Okay, you can ask.
No, you can. Did you want to say? You just wanted
No,
to mention
I just
it.
give them a clue to ask about green economy.
Okay. All right. So we've got time for 2 questions. So if someone would like to hit these, I can see. Okay. The one in my line of sight was way down there. Yes. The lady in the blue hijab. And maybe,
Sorry, I'm a guy.
you a lady in the blue hijab. So, okay.
Okay, so-
okay, you and then you at the back after this man here.
Right, okay. So this is addressed to no one in particular, but this is a question of personal and professional interest. So we talked at large about AI, but what I am still not getting at personally is what kind of co-creation we are looking at. Because, and I mean, at least to the extent of my knowledge, in terms of both hardware and software, both are still being dominated by the West, by Silicon Valley especially. So, I mean, my question is that if we do want to co-create, then what kind of areas that we can look at? Basically, that. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I just mentioned green economy. Yeah, a young man like you,
He listened to
should,
you.
huh?
He listened to you.
Yeah, a young man like you should go and ask yourself, what is the strength of the Indonesian green situation, and how can we invite Japanese investor or participants in creating joint effort with regard to green? Yeah, and there are many things that you can find because Japan being one of the country further up north, and ASEAN, in the case Indonesia, you are the southern crucible of Asia Pacific. You have many things you can do to help stabilize or equalize the disruption to the environment. So this is something to think about, and many Indonesian initiatives among young people on climate change and green sustainability have already taken place. So now try to interest the Japanese to invest in your initiative.
Right. Good advice. And
Yeah,
Ishikawa-san.
let me answer to the question very quickly. Yeah, let me answer the question you just mentioned, because that is something area is working on right now. One area we should definitely need to have for the co-creation in AI is the rules about the data utilization. Because as you mentioned, that in the AI era, it is important to have the access to the infrastructure and also access to the data. But what is happening in this region right now is that each country has its own rules, especially the privacy rules. So many companies are required to store the privacy data in its own country. So it is the potential for utilizing those data is quite limited unless we have the common rules. So that is something we need to have among the ASEAN member states and with Japan.
Right, thank you. Good point. Master-san, do you want to say something very brief about any of this, or? Okay.
He want no privacy rules.
Huh.
He wants to have everything.
We could do a whole panel on privacy rules, but anyway, and data centers. But anyway, I think we'll turn to, yes, you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Nurbujada Khairiyah. I'm a third-year undergraduate student from Islamic State University of Sunan Ampel, Surabaya. So, in my understanding, one of the objectives of this partnership is focusing more in technology innovation and advancement. But as we know that Indonesia, as a key role of ASEAN, also still faces challenges like poverty, a low level of education, as well as less skilled labor. So my question is, could these challenges be seen as a hindrance to achieve objectives of East Asia and ASEAN partnership? Thank you.
That's an excellent question, Makato. I think that one is for you.
IT and technology, including AI, should be leveraged to exactly address these issues like poverty, because there is added value to it. But in fact, the challenge is because when it comes to workforce, there's a danger that AI will actually kill jobs. And to be able for us to, for our younger generation, to prosper in such an environment of AI and robotics, is again on the issue of creativity. Creativity, education for the future of work. And I think ASEAN and Japan, we both have that creativity, have this, especially Japan, the strength in technology, in IT, but also in creativity, based on culture, civilizational roots. So this is what we can bring. This is in a very broad concept.
A very good point. And last word to you, Ambassador.
No, I just wanted to respond to the lady who asked the question. Don't be misled into thinking that since we talk so much about business innovation, Japan ASEAN cooperation is confined to that area. Japan is the most important dialogue partner and operating partner of ASEAN in terms of disaster management. Yeah, Indonesia, as you know, you have volcano, you have tsunami, you have earthquakes. Yeah, and the Japanese contribution over the years have created a good infrastructure. You have the AHA Center in Jakarta. AHA stands for ASEAN Humanitarian Assistance Center. Many of the activities there are funded by Japanese government to build up our capacity and capability to respond to all these natural disasters that come attack our countries, especially here in Indonesia, because you are such a big archipelagic state. So if you look at what we are doing in that sector, you will find that there are many things that the Japanese special programs have helped ASEAN member states beyond the technology, beyond the economy. Yeah, and we now have on standby warehouses of equipment in ASEAN region funded by Japan. And we have even Japanese team that come out quickly to help our ASEAN team to manage the disaster. So it's not just with regard to economy or business.
Right.
Socially.
Good point.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the very final word. No, Master-san, come on. Very quickly.
Okay, so if we talk about the poverty things, so the education is always a key. So the infrastructure about the internet connection is everywhere now. And then the AI is going to change the language barrier in very soon. So the all contents about the education coming from Japan could be used in every country in ASEAN as well. So that would be one of the key to get out from the poverties in some rural areas.
Right. Look, thank you. And I would just like to say one thing. I was struck by the new Indonesian Foreign Minister's speech this morning. I think most of you might have heard it, but you don't often see a foreign minister laying through a lot of the foreign policy challenges, but then bringing it back to stressing poverty, food security, and that these have to be resolved to be able to, you know, really enact and have a full active foreign policy. So I thought that was a good indication of some priorities. Maybe you might see more action on poverty alleviation, which would help boost Indonesia towards what we're talking about now. Anyway, I'd like to just briefly sum up the panel in, I think the most instructive and illuminating things that came out of this was which we probably all know, but you know, the future is really with the youth in the region, and also this growing trend for an equalizing of relations between the ASEAN countries and what we called the original donor-recipient relationship, and that is being driven by both youth and these other considerable number of factors. So I hope you had some takeaways from that session. I think we all certainly did, and I'd like to thank our excellent speakers. Sorry for being bullied and kept to time, although we ran way over time. So thank you
Just
very
look
much.
after the old people like me.
Well, yes, look after the old people, everybody out there. Pakato will be next. Okay, thank you very much.